What's up everybody, Phil Bowen here with Alpine Electronics. In this video I'm going to be walking you through the install of our brand new i509-WRA-JL. This unit is for the 18 and newer Wrangler JL, 20 and newer Jeep Gladiator. This is our newest 9-inch unit with our 9-inch HD display, wireless Android Auto and CarPlay, Hi-Res audio, and so much more. Before we get into the installation, let's go over the basic tools that we're going to need. First thing we're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver or a screw gun. We're going to need a panel removal tool. We're going to need a 10mm socket, an 8mm socket, a ratchet with extension, a T25 Torx bit, and a 10mm wrench. Okay, so before we begin disassembling the vehicle, we want to disconnect the negative battery terminal. So using our 10mm wrench, we're going to go ahead and take the negative terminal off now. Okay, so now that we have the battery disconnected, now we can begin disassembling the vehicle. The first thing we're going to need to remove is the knee bolster panel. Then we can remove the HVAC controls, the factory radio bezel. Then we can get the factory radio out. Then we'll pull out the window switch controls, the tweeter cover, the A-pillar panel, and lastly, the roll bar panel. Now the knee bolster panel is held on by 6 retaining clips. Pull outward on the panel to remove the clips. Okay, so next we need to remove the HVAC controls. Using our panel removal tool, we'll pry outward to release the clips. Now unplug the 2 plugs on the back and set the panel aside. Next, we'll remove the 2 screws that are holding on the factory radio bezel, and then using our panel removal tool, we'll unclip and remove it. Next, we can remove the 4 screws that are holding in the factory radio, then we can unplug and remove it. Okay, so now that we have the HVAC controls and the factory radio out of the way, now we can remove the window switch panel. We're going to remove the 1 screw that's holding it in, and then we'll pull outward to release the clips, unplug all the connectors, and then we can remove the panel. Next, using our panel removal tool, we're going to remove the tweeter cover. Now we can remove the A-pillar panel. With our panel removal tool, we will remove the covers to expose the 10mm bolts that are holding the grab handle, remove the bolts, and then we can remove the panel. Okay, so now we can remove the roll bar panel. Using our T25 Torx bit, we're going to remove the 4 Torx screws that are holding the panel on, and then we can release the clips. Okay, so now that we've got the vehicle all disassembled, now we can unbox our radio and we can start installing the components. Okay, now we've got everything unboxed and laid out on the workbench. The first thing I like to do is assemble as much of the unit as I can before going into the vehicle. Makes it a lot easier once we start plugging things in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to mount our radio bracket to our head unit. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount the display bracket to the display. Starting with our head unit, we'll slide the head unit into the bracket until it aligns with the screw holes, and then we will secure it using the supplied pan head screws. Next, we could take our display and we'll mount the display bracket to the back of it. Okay, next what we want to do is we want to take our factory window switch panel and remove the OEM USB media hub. The i509 includes an upgraded media hub that gives you dual USB input as well as HDMI input and an auxiliary input. To remove the factory media hub, release the 4 clips on the back and push it out through the front. And now with our factory media hub removed, now we can install our new one. Slide the cables in through the front and snap it into place. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to flash our Maestro module. To do this, we're going to plug in the supplied micro USB cable, plug the other end into our computer, then we're going to go to idatalinkmaestro.com, enter the year, make, and model of the vehicle, what factory features it came with, and the serial number of the radio. Flashing the Maestro module is a very important step. The Maestro module is responsible for retaining vehicle factory features such as backup camera, steering wheel controls, as well as displaying information on screen like tire pressure and battery voltage. Now that we have our Maestro module flashed, we can go ahead and plug it into the main harness. The main harness is pre-wired for the Maestro, and the connectors are color-coded for easy identification. All right, now we've got the radio assembled as much as we can. Now we can jump back in the vehicle and start installing components. The first component that I like to install is the Bluetooth microphone. The Bluetooth microphone is going to mount on the glass right behind the rear view mirror. The cable will run across the top panel here and then down the A-pillar. To mount the microphone, begin by installing the supplied mount, then install the double-sided tape. Remove the backing from the double-sided tape and firmly press on the windshield. Now we can route the cable through the panel and out the front. I'll run the cable along the factory harness over to the driver's A-pillar. Now that we have our Bluetooth wire run to this point here, we're going to go ahead and install our GPS antenna. The GPS antenna mounts on top of the roll bar above the rear sound bar. The cable will run forward along the roll bar here, meet up with the Bluetooth cable, and then we'll run both of them down the A-pillar down to the radio. Included in the kit is 3 self-adhesive wire clips. These go on the roll bar along the way to give you something to attach the wire to. Okay, and now with our GPS antenna and our Bluetooth microphone cable here, now we can run these wires together down the A-pillar. Now we'll take our GPS antenna cable and our Bluetooth microphone cable, run them down along the side of the dash and then down underneath the steering column. Next, we're going to go ahead and run our main radio harness. Now, the main brain of the radio mounts down here below the steering column. So what we have to do is take this harness, run it from the factory radio cavity down and over to where the radio is going to go. Okay, now that we have the main harness run down to where we need it, now we can go ahead and plug in the main connector. Next, we could plug in the FM antenna. And now we can plug in our factory satellite radio antenna adapter. The next thing we need to do is run our CAN bus connectors down behind the glove compartment and plug it into the CAN bus distribution block. To lower the glove compartment, release the soft close mechanism and push upwards on the tab above it to remove it. The male end of the CAN bus connector plugs into an empty spot on the green CAN bus distribution block. There's a T on the harness in case there's no empty spots on the block. So now that we have the glove compartment down, it's a good time to go ahead and install the chime speaker. The chime speaker comes with Velcro on the back, which allows you to attach it to a surface behind the glove compartment. The other end of the speaker will route up behind the radio cavity and we'll plug it into our Maestro module. After removing the OEM USB hub, you're going to have two factory USB connectors that came from it. One of them is gray, one of them is black. The kit supplies a USB adapter to retain power only on the factory USB ports. The USB adapter plugs into the black connector from the factory USB port. Okay, now with our USB adapter plugged in, now we need to plug in our power adapter. This will plug into our USB connector. The other end will route up behind the radio and plug into the auxiliary power terminal. Okay, the next component that we need to install is the factory backup camera interface. This interface allows us to retain the OEM backup camera. First, we'll plug in the camera adapter power connector. Then we'll plug in the camera adapter CAN bus connector. Now we can plug in our camera input adapter. Next, we'll plug in our RCA video cable. Now we can plug in camera input to our interface. Plug in video output. And then lastly, we can plug in our power and CAN in harness. One thing to be aware of with the camera interface adapter is that dip switch number 1 must be in the up position for Wrangler and down for Gladiator. The last thing we need to do before we can put the display in is we need to run the display cable and the display power harness. Note that the power harness is labeled head unit side and display side. Make sure to run it properly. Next, we'll take the display cable and run it the same. Okay, now that we have all of our wiring run, now we can go ahead and plug in and mount our display. First we plug in our display cable, then we plug in our power harness. Now we can mount our display. The display end of the display harness has two plugs coming off of it. One of them is power for the display. The other one is for the external buttons to control the unit. Make sure that the external button plug is accessible after you've got the display mounted. Now the next thing we need to do is install our radio brain. The brain mounts to this bracket right below the steering column, and all the cables that we ran to this location will plug into it. A couple things to notice on the brain. There is a flat spot here we have on top of the bracket. This spot here is for mounting a satellite radio tuner if you choose to add the satellite radio tuner to the system. The other thing that we include with the kit is a power inverter bracket that will mount on the side of the radio in case the vehicle came equipped with factory power inverters. This particular Jeep did not come with factory power inverters, so we're not going to use that bracket in this installation. Now that the radio is in place, use the supplied bolts and secure it to the factory bolt locations. Okay, now that the brain's mounted, we can start plugging in all of our connectors, get our USBs run over to the media center, we'll get the battery reconnected, and then we'll fire this thing up. Now what we need to do is take our USB extension cables and run these over to the center console where they're going to plug into the media hub. Next, we're going to reinstall our window switch panel with our new media hub. Since our new media hub has HDMI and auxiliary input as well as USB, we need to run our HDMI and our aux cables over to our head unit and plug them into the brain. Now with our HDMI and our auxiliary run, now we can plug in our USB cables. Notice that there's USB 1 and USB 2 on the media hub. USB 1 is for charge only. That would be our gray USB extension cable coming from the brain. USB 2 is for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto input. That one will plug into the USB 2. Now we can go ahead and reconnect our window switch and our power outlet and remount the window switch panel. Now we can go ahead and plug in our auxiliary and our HDMI input. Okay, now that we've got all the components installed, now we can go ahead and put the vehicle back together, get that battery reconnected, and then we can fire this thing up. First, we can reinstall our HVAC control panel. Next, we can reinstall the roll bar panel. Now we can reinstall our A-pillar panel. Now we can put our tweeter grill back on. Now we can put the knee panel back on. And lastly, we can install our new radio bezel. So there you have it, guys. That's the install of the new i509-WRA-JL for the new Wrangler JL and Jeep Gladiator. Be sure to hit that like button, drop us a comment, let us know if you have any questions, and happy installing.